Like I said, it's so good to see you here finally. Hope you had no trouble finding the place. Were the aides any problem? They do tend to be a bit overprotective at times. Thank you. It is good to finally sit down and talk with you. With the directions you gave, and my handy global positioning satellite system, I was able to drive here with no problems. The aides did frisk me, and looked under my vehicle with mirrors, but no problem. I'm quite used to that. I am frisked each time I go to the airport. Yes. The safety measures can be bothersome. But it goes with the territory. You understand? Yes, as I said, no problem. Good, good. What's on your mind that you had to drive through 4 states over 3 days to get here? It must be important. Well, I was wanting to discuss a biblical matter with you. The monetary tithe that is being preached in our religious institutions around the world. Is it really necessary? I mean, the economy has been down for some time now, and people need all the money they can get to put food on their tables and pay their mortgage or rent, and utilities. It's funny that you should mention the tithe. I have been doing some deep study and meditating over the Word of God. I, like you, also believe things need to change. I have discovered some interesting things about the tithe that have troubled my spirit for some time now. Oh yeah, like what? Okay. The biblical bottom line. 1. Tithing has nothing to do with New Testament Christians. 2. No apostle ever taught tithing, asked for a tithe, rebuked any person or church for not tithing, or received a tithe. Not one of them. 3. The early church, in the book of Acts, never tithed. We have no record of them doing so. 4. God never authorized a monetary tithe, tithing money. 5. The biblical tithe was fruits, vegetable and clean animals grown on the promised land. No tithe was permitted if it was not grown on the promised land. 6. Abraham's tithe was a one-time gift to Melchizedek, and was not a commandment of God to Abraham to pay it. We do not know what it consisted of. And, we have no record of Abraham ever tithing again. 7. There is no record of Jacob tithing. He promised to, but did not keep his vow to God, which included to tithe. 8. Jesus did not teach Christians to tithe in Matthew 23:23. He was addressing Jews, Pharisees, who were, at that time, still under the law, and yes, they should have been tithing if they were growing, or herding, fruits, vegetables and clean animals on the promised land. 9. Malachi is not a book of the Bible that in any way is commanding Christians to tithe. 10. Any ministers, pastor, teacher, etc., who teaches you that you must tithe is either a liar, a thief, or an ignorant person mishandling the Word of God. 11. Christians are not under any curse for not tithing. If you have been told that, you have been lied to. 12. Hebrews chapter 7, verses 6 to 10 are not verses in the New Testament teaching Christians to tithe. 13. 16 times in the Old Testament God declares, the one and only one who makes the rules and decides what a tithe will be, that the tithe will only be fruits, vegetables and clean animals. Never gold, silver or currency. Never. 14. God never called Gentiles to tithe, and there is no scriptural doctrine that God ever transferred the ownership of the tithe from the Levite to any church, pastor, teacher, apostle, prophet, evangelist or for that matter, anyone. 15. We are called to be free will givers, not tithers. With all due respect, if anyone wants to try and prove any of those 15 facts a lie or wrong, have at it. And these are the facts about tithing. The 3 different types of tithes are as follows. 1. The Levitical, or sacred tithe, Numbers 18, verses 21 and 24. 2. The tithe of the feasts, Deuteronomy 14, verses 22 through 27. 3. The tithe for the poor, Deuteronomy 14, verses 28 and 29. The first tithe, Leviticus 27, verses 30 through 33 defines this tithe as a tenth of crops and animals in herds and flocks. Numbers 18 gives the ordinances, or instructions, for this tithe, and commands this tithe be taken to the Levites. Purpose of this tithe, to support the Levitical priesthood. Second tithe, Deuteronomy 14:22 through 27, also known as the festival tithe. a tenth of crops, plus add to that the firstborn animals, and take these to the yearly feasts. Purpose of this tithe: that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. Third tithe, Deuteronomy 14:28 and 29, also known as the 3-year tithe, also known as the poor tithe. A tenth of crops, kept at home, and invite the Levites, widows, orphans, stranger to eat. Purpose of this tithe: to feed the poor. Which one do you see Christians paying? Not one. They pay, if deceived, into paying a monetary tithe of their income which God has not authorized or commanded in the New Testament. The only people in the Old Testament that were commanded to tithe were those who inherited the promised land with everything on it. They received the land, houses, animals, crops, etc. all free and clear. No mortgage payment or rent to pay. And they were commanded to tithe on the crops and animals and take it to the Levites who inherited the tithe instead of the promised land. No one else tithed. Wage earners did not tithe. Jesus did not tithe as a carpenter. Paul did not tithe as a tent maker. Peter did not tithe as a fisherman. Now, ask yourself, how can your church, ministry or pastor, be the storehouse? Notice, storehouse, not storehouses. Not plural. There was one storehouse, the temple. Churches are never called storehouses in the New Testament, neither is any other New Testament ministry. They do not have any claim of a tithe being paid to them as a storehouse or otherwise.